Myself, Anitha Eswaran. Let me put it in the presenter mode. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone present here. Thank you for joining the session. Thank you, Rami. Thank you, Jeevan, and the entire team for organizing this the summit, because I strongly feel such summits and the connect would will help us to keep in sync with the rapid updates which are happening across the Dynamics ecosystem. It is not only Dynamics ecosystem, but it is across the maybe the Azure or the Power Platform, across the entire ecosystem. So thanks again. So welcome to my session, behind the scenes of D365FO data. And thank you, sponsors. Thanks a lot for organizing this session, the summit. Myself, Anitha Eswaran. I am a Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations Solution Architect. I am into MVP program since 2 years. I am also a Microsoft certified trainer. I have given the LinkedIn details here. I regularly publish my newsletters, and I also author the community recognized blog. So all these details are in my LinkedIn page. Okay, so now a quick agenda. Why is the data handling strategy matters? Because I am going to deep dive into the data integration frameworks and what are all the approaches we can use. So this I will be giving you a quick walkthrough of the different approaches what we use in the data handling frameworks, and it covers the synchronous methods as well as the asynchronous methods. And along with that, we should always also take care of the environment tier alignment. So that also matters when you implement these approaches, be it synchronous or asynchronous, that has to be aligned with the environment tier as well. And the recommendations, and we will finish our session with the question and answer. Now, why is data handling strategy matters? So in F&O integration, a well-defined data movement strategy plays an important role here because it directly impacts the system performance, data accuracy, compliance, and the overall success of the implementation, the ERP implementation. Because if you don't plan the data strategy properly, the integration can pose the risk, and it might become slow or error prone, and it might be costly to maintain. So it ensures accuracy and consistency. So as you are aware, data integration touches every business processes, right? So if a clear strategy, what if you have a clear strategy, it guarantees that the master data, the transactional records, and the configurations are transferred correctly, avoiding the mismatches. So there will not be any disruption in the operations. So that ensures accuracy and consistency. And it also supports the performance and scalability. So during the peak hours, so every business will have peak and non-peak hours, correct? So we should not only plan for the non-peak hours, because you cannot design a integration for peak hours and non-peak hours, correct? So we should accommodate our integration strategy in such a way that whenever a large volume of data are expected, the proper techniques should be designed to optimize the throughput where we will have minimum downtime. So that is how it supports the performance and scalability. It also minimizes the risk during the cutover. So if you see the cutover, like a strategy defines which data moves first, right? That is how the cutover during a go live is planned. So it defines which data to move first and how the dependencies are handled. And if there are any fallback, we should have a fallback plan if there are any issues arises. So this minimizes the risk during the cutover. And then comes the data prioritization. So it identifying the critical entities and the secondary data. For instance, few entities are critical before uploading the other data. For instance, the customer or the vendors and the GL entries, they matters the most before, because they play an important role before the other data is transferred there. Okay, so with the right tools and the environment planning, the data handling strategy brings a success to the ERP implementation, any ERP implementation. So in essence, a data movement strategy is not just a technical planning, it is the backbone of any FNO, any ERP successful integration. It ensures that the ERP system launches smoothly and it supports business continuity and it also scales with the future growth. If you have any questions, you can stop me in between and you can clarify the doubts. I have no issues. So the first approach is the synchronous data movement. So what are the types of synchronous data movement we have? What is synchronous? So as soon as we think about synchronous, we will have either a real time. So here we have real time and par real time approaches. One is OData and the other one where the OData is supported for the real time updates, transactional and the low volume. Custom services where in case if you need to have additional tailored logic as per your requirement, then the custom services pitches in. The dual, right, as you are all aware, it is a real-time sync with, it is a tightly coupled framework in sync with the Dataverse and Excel add-in. So you have an ad hoc data manipulation using the Excel add-in. So we will see each of this approach in the next coming slides. And I will be able to show you a small demo using this OData with the simple Postman tool because I don't want to like the Postman is a quick tool where you can easily configure and try out all your tests there. OData. What is OData? So OData, it is an open data protocol. It is a REST-based protocol that exposes the FNO entities as consumable endpoint. So it is ideal for the real-time scenarios where you have and also for the lightweight integration, especially when the external systems needs to push or pull the data on demand. So this is mainly, if you want to access the real-time data, then it enables the synchronous read or write. It is not only read, write, it supports all CRUD operations, create, read, update, and delete. So it is perfect for scenarios where the solutions need instant feedback. So what is entity-centric design? It exposes because here how the OData works is it is working based on the data entities directly. So here the FNO data entities are directly consumed. It allows the developer or the not only developers, even the non-programmers can interact with the business data without having much on the X++ knowledge here. And it is also Power Platform friendly, not only Power Platform, Logic Apps, any middleware you can even consume from the Power Apps, Power Automate, and it can seamlessly connect with any of these middlewares, where enabling the low code and the developer scenarios is implemented. But it has a limited batch support. You can implement batch, but it is with a limited support here. The cons here is we will have some performance bottleneck. When you have a bulk data, you might end up in a throttling. So here you have something called as a throttling window. In request, you will be able to send max to max 6,000 records in an hour window. But if it crosses more than the 6,000, then there will be some performance impact and the system will end up in a throttling effect where you will not be able to read or write or fetch anything from the system. So here in this case, OData is not suitable for bulk input. Okay, now next to the custom services. The custom services here we are where the scenarios where the standard entities they don't meet the requirements. For instance, you have some requirements where you need some additional processing or any additional validations if you want. In that case, the data entity or the custom entity or your standard data entity might not support. So in that case, we will go for the custom services where the tailored logic and the business rules, complex business rules can be implemented. So here the integrations need conditional processing and validations here. And there are so many advantages using the custom services. Few I have listed down. It has a full control over the data flow and the transformation. Here, what is the meaning of this? The developers can design exactly. Not only developers. See, you want to have some a bundling, enabling the bundling of the related actions. For instance, you want to create a sales order. Okay, create a sales order along with the headers and the line in one call. Then you can achieve it using the custom services. That is what you can expose as composite operation. So which means the entire control of the data flow and the transformation is with the user. Okay, so this is how the data is received, validated, transformed, and so there is no dependency on the framework constraints here. Thus, it enables the encapsulation of the business logic. So it can be reused across the channels. It can be centralized and it can be reused across the channels where middleware can consume it, or even the mobile apps can consume it. And it promotes the consistency and maintainability. It not only it can accommodate various complex payloads. For instance, it can accept in JSON, it can accept the data in XML, and it can return the structured responses. So just it enables the richer client interactions. And here there are few cons here. Like for instance, we will have some development and maintenance overhead, because for instance, whenever if there are any new changes or any update in any new changes in the requirement, then again we will end up having some additional development effort and some testing effort as well. And we don't have a custom monitoring. We need to accommodate for the custom monitoring and logging, because it is, for instance, it doesn't have an inbuilt logging as DIXF, which I will be telling in the upcoming slides. So in this case, telemetry should be explicitly designed. For instance, now we have an option to enable the application insights or the custom logging framework. So with that, we will be able to capture the log or monitor the failure alerts. Next one is dual write. So it is for the real-time synchronization between the FNO and Dataverse, where for instance, it has a unified customer, vendor, and product data across the finance and CE apps. What does it mean? Where, for instance, where all these entities, for instance, the customer, vendor, and the other core entities, they are shared seamlessly across finance and customer engagement applications. So for instance, the scenarios like quote to cash, prospect to customer, vendor onboarding scenarios, they will be able to achieve without any manual interventions. Once you configure, everything will be seamless. You have lots of out of box entities, like almost for more than 30 core tables. So it will be which is pre-mapped, and we will have a reduced development effort, and it is a bidirectional sync, so which ensures you don't need to worry about whether the data has gone from FNO to CE or CE to FNO. So here it ensures the data consistency. The framework itself ensures the data consistency across the platform. So this makes that whatever the changes you do in CE, it will be automatically reflected in FNO. It is near real time scenarios, and it also has an initial sync and live updates, so thus it keeps the systems aligned. Only thing is, we have sometimes we will have some issue with the complex troubleshooting, because at times due to the mismatched data types or the missing dependencies or the plugging failures, we might end up having some issues. So the troubleshooting might be complex here at times, but not always. These are all the teething problem when you set up the dual write for the first time. And then at times the initial setup can also be time consuming for the custom entities, especially with the initial configuration where the schema alignment, all this field mapping and the dependency resolution. Then Excel add-in. So Excel add-in, it is mainly for ad hoc data manipulation. So for instance, the business users can directly edit the data in D365FO in Excel and publish the changes back in real time. So for instance, they can export the customer group or the journal lines or any master data. They can export using Excel from FNO, and they can make any changes or delete the data, whatever they can do, and it can be published. So it is ad hoc data manipulation, where the users they need to quickly filter or sort something if they want to edit bulk records, where we don't need to have any custom imports here. And it also has a validation against the business rule. For instance, since it operates on data the entity basis, since we have a data entity, underlying data entity, all the communication is in synchronously with FNO, because for instance, all the validations are respected when you do any data changes. For instance, if you are trying to make some changes in the read-only field, in the entity, it is a read-only. And when you're trying to update that field from Excel and try to publish, the underlying validation will throw you and pop up and throw you an error that that particular field is a read only. Or if there are any updates not if the updates are not allowed for a particular field, even that time also that will automatically throw the error message. So here the error visibility will be easily seen to the user, because in that case they can correct the issues before publishing itself. And also it is entity aware. So since I have already told you that these are all the entity based on the entity data entities, it ensures the schema alignment and it also respects the all the business rules here. It is all on top of the standard rules. If you have any custom rules as per your business requirement, that also will be respected when you do an Excel add-in or when you publish the data via Excel add-in, thus making it user friendly. And because anybody can do this Excel, if I mean most of us are familiar with the Excel interface, right? So it reduces the training overhead for the finance and operation teams, but it is not suitable for the large data set. For instance, if we try to import or publish more than 15,000 or 10,000 records, then we will end up in throttling, like how we faced in the OData services. So here also we will end up in throttling. But here you will have a limited transformation. For instance, in the custom services, you have an option to transform your data, because that the code is the control is with us. But in this case, there is no chance of transformation. So whatever the data you give in the Excel, that will be published in the end system. Okay, so now we have seen the synchronous data movement approach. Let us now understand about asynchronous data movement. So what is asynchronous? So as soon as we think about asynchronous, so in FNO, we will always suggest DIXF. This is called Data Import Export Framework. So this is ideal for the high volume imports or exports, like such as customers or vendors or product, even any major transactions. If you want to have any bulk uploads, then DIXF is the best approach here. And it is also used for the migration and the cutover activities, because for commonly when we go for when before the go live, we might need to move the legacy data into FNO, correct? So during such activities, the cutover activities, DIXF comes as a rescue, because we need to import large amount of data to the system. So in that case, and even when you have a tight deadlines or tight downtime during this cutover activities, then the DIXF framework, since it operates as a batch in mode, then all these migration activities goes smooth. And here also you have a data validation before commit to the, before we commit to the target, the live table, the data can be validated using the staging table. So what is staging table here? Staging table is data first lands in the staging table, and it allows the validation or the transformation. You can also give your own validation, or there are some validations in the table level and the entity level also. So these validations will be performed when the data lands in the staging table, and if there is any transformation is needed, that also can be done. And if before commit, all this can be done in the staging level before committing to the target entities. And it will support multi-format. It has a multi-format support options, where it is not only limited to CSV. In the CSV itself, you have a comma separated or a pipeline delimiter, or if it is a semicolon separated files, all this Excel, XML, all these formats are supported by DIXF. And it is also for error handling. You have an inbuilt error handling. That is what you see in the staging. So if there are any data validation, or if the validation error if you see any validation error, you will be able to handle it in the staging itself. And what happens, it is good for the user. He doesn't need to import again. He can come to the staging table, he can correct the data, and then he can reprocess it from the staging table rather than pushing it from the source again. So this is one of the major advantage we have when we use the DIXF. And another advantage is we can enable the change tracking. What is change tracking? For instance, you are only exporting the data which is modified or newly created or deleted. For instance, a customer, take a instance of a customer master. You have 500 records, example. So first time you are importing all the 500 records to an external third party system. Okay. So next time you don't need to export all the 500 records again, correct? That will have a performance impact, and that is not needed also. So during this, when you enable the change tracking in the DIXF, what it does is it takes care of exporting the data which is changed. For instance, out of 500 records, if only 10 records or 15 records are changed, and some 5 records are created and some 2 records are deleted, only these changes are sent to the end system, not the entire 500 records again. So this is called, we call it as incremental approach. So whatever, when change tracking is enabled, only the changes made to those records are exported to the third party system or exported out of the system here. So this is one of the major advantage when we use the DIXF. And coming to event-driven architecture. So here you have something called as business event and the data event. So the data, what is event-driven architecture? Event-driven architecture is a design paradigm where the systems communicate through the alerts. So you have an alert rather than the calls, direct calls. You have an alert mechanism via that event mechanism. Via that, the calls are made here. So this is mainly useful for the loosely coupled integration. What do you mean by the loosely coupled integration? Here you have something called as publisher and consumer. We call publisher as the source system, consumer as the end system. So here the publisher, they don't need to care who consumes the event or whether the event is consumed or not. So for instance, the event is triggered when the customer invoice is created. Okay, when the customer invoice is posted and it goes out of FNO and it reaches the third party, for instance, a service bus. So in that case, the publisher, he doesn't need to worry whether that message is consumed by the consumer or not. So this is called decoupling. So here both publisher and consumer, they don't need to be online when this particular integration, when this particular flow happens. And the extensibility here, you can add any new subscribers without touching the FNO. The same event can be consumed by multiple consumers here. So here, even if one consumer fails, the other consumer will not be affected. This is what is extensibility. But only thing, the inconsistency might result. For instance, if the consumer consumes the message in a delayed manner, then the end system might have some consistency issue. For instance, the data what is sent from our FNO might not be updated immediately in the end system. How the event mechanisms are working. So here we have business event and data events. So you will be asking, what is business event and what is the difference between the business event and the data event? So here the data event is entirely built on the data entities. So when whatever the data entities are available in the standard or even the custom entity, they can be used for data events. So it captures all the CRUD operations: create, read, update, and delete. In case of business events, these are all the events. This occurs when an event is happening. For instance, a customer invoice is posted, or when a shipment is confirmed, or a purchase order is the packing slip for the sales order is posted. Such events, there are so many inbuilt business events. So when such events happen, then the mechanism is triggered. So these are all the contextual message. We call it as a payload. Events contains the payload. For instance, these messages can have customer invoice number or the customer number. In case of the customer invoice event, what might be the payload here? What might be the message here? It might be the customer invoice ID, or it might be the customer number, name. All these can be a part of the payload. And here the downstream subscribers can be Dynamics FNO, I mean Dynamics CE, or the Salesforce. They can subscribe to any customer related events. Plus you can also take the subscribers from the external application, any payment gateways or any data lakes or any power platform related workflows can also be configured from business event or data event. So the thing here is it is independent and asynchronous processing of the events. So as I said again, publisher and the subscriber, they don't need to be online when this particular flow is happening. Publisher will send the message, okay, and then consumer can take the message anytime whenever any based on any recurrence or any event is triggered. And there is also a process of dead letter queue or a retry mechanism. What is a dead letter queue? For instance, the business event has sent the message, okay, and it has not been consumed by any of the consumer, let us say for 15 days. So we can configure a dead letter queue to send that particular message which is not consumed by any of the consumers for a period of 15 days or 20 days to a dead letter queue. So in this way, we can track whether the data is whether the messages, we will be able to track if the message is failed or not. So that is what the purpose of the dead letter queue. So before I go to this particular slide, environment and data flow, let me give you a quick walkthrough of my favorite tool, Postman, where you can see how the OData works. So it operates on the authentication, the OData OAuth approach, where you will be giving all the client credentials to communicate with the end system. For instance, here I have my D365FO environment. And yeah, let me see. I have told you, like in the OData, you will be able to filter the records or skip the records, correct? So for instance, if I want to filter the records using the get approach, all these CRUD operations are supported using OData. So this might be, I don't want to show the same in the Power Platform because the same approach is also used in the Power Platform. But in order to get a hands-on experience, Postman is a recommended tool for all the CRUD operations, simple operations. So if you want to test something, Postman is a recommended tool here. So here if you see, I have queried my data. This is a customer group, is my data entity. Okay. To get the customer group, the details of the customer group ID and the description for the customer group ID of 90. So it will be fetching the data across the other data area IDs as well, not only from one legal entity, it will be from across the legal entity where the customer group is 90. So that is what is the cross company feature here. I also told you it is possible to skip the data. For instance, if I want to skip the data in the customer, if you see the count is 46 records are there. I have asked my, okay, okay, here you have 46 records. I have asked my request to skip 44 records. So now if I copy paste and put it in a notepad for the result, if you see, you will be able to see only 2 records which are displayed. Do you see only 2 records are displayed here out of 46 because the skip has done the job of skipping the first 44 records, and it is only displaying the 2 records in the result. So in this way, if you want to skip in the OData, when for instance, if you want to skip some data, if you can put it as top 10, if you want to skip the first 10 records, then you can give a top 10 of the top 10 count and then skip the first 10 records. So in this way, it is also possible to do a skip. And in case of select, for instance, you do not want to select, bring all the fields in your response. You want only the selected fields in your response. In that case, you will be able to give a select statement where you are sending only I want these are all the fields I want in my response. So here we have almost close to 100 fields in the sales order header. So in my case, what I have told, hey, I want only one field. I want to fetch only the sales order number. So here I have given the select as sales order number. This is the field name and the count. The count, of course, it says how many records it has returned, how many records having the status as back order, where the open order, and then it returns the records. And if you remember, I told you CRUD operations are possible here. So let me show you how a CRUD operation is done. First, let me read the sales pool. For instance, I have the sales pools. I have 5 records in the sales pool. Let me show you the sales pool. Here I have 4 records in the sales pool. Okay, so that is what the get operation does. So let me create a new record, okay, via the sales pool. So here it has created, and if I go to my FNO, it is sales pool USMF 201, it is created. Yeah, see, the test pool is created, a new record. So if you want to update something, it is done via a patch. For instance, I am going to update the record which I have created now with the description. Now it is sales pool. I am going to update as updated. So I'm just going to update. You will not get a response back, but you will also only be getting 204 no content, which means the request is successful. So now if I see, you can see the test pool is updated. Now, if you want to delete, I can also delete it, correct? So here via delete, I am going to send this, what is the pool and what is the data area ID. If I send this delete, this also gives me 204 no content, which means that the request is successful. Now, if I go and see in my, it will take some time. Okay, no request for, okay, which means it has done the job. Yeah. So here you can see all the CRUD operations can be simply executed via this Postman tool. I have also told you about the DIXF. It need not be that DIXF for testing the DIXF. I am not telling about the bulk load, but if you want to test something, whether the DIXF is working, how do you configure the DIXF, that also can be done via the Postman. For instance, here I have set up the a simple DIXF import job where I am going to import extra some additional records in the customer group via the DIXF. So here if I go to my DIXF, here you don't have an extra customers, and I have configured a data management framework, the import project here. So here via this, I am going to push the data from the Postman to the FNO. What happens? So here I am again repeating, this is not for bulk load. You can test whether the import is working fine or not. So as soon as it sends the data, as soon as you execute this, it will be returning a message ID for you, which means the message is already sent to FNO. If you see, this is the message, same message ID, what you see here, EF87 blah blah blah, this one. So it is in the queued status. So as I said, DIXF always operates in the asynchronous manner. It is an asynchronous approach. It receives the data, it puts it in the queue, and it waits for the batch mode to trigger, and it immediately processes the records. It will take some time based on the AOS, the batch availability. The queue will be triggered, the process will be triggered, and it will start processing the record. One advantage of DIXF is it will, if the record doesn't exist, for instance, in my case, these records do not exist. So it will attempt to create the record. I can send the same message again. And what happens? It will create another queue, another message here. And since the record already exists, it will update the record. That is one of the best feature what we have in DAXF. The entity itself will take care of, see if you see it is processed already. The entity itself will take care of creating or updating by itself based on the ID what is present here. If you see, you can see there are two records which are already created, and if you see, these records will be reflected here. See, 300, 301, 300, 301. If I send the same records again with a different description, then DIXF will attempt to update those records. So this is one of the best feature we have in DIXF, where we don't need to worry whether you are ending up in update or create. Okay, so now we have seen OData, DIXF, and the last one, let me just give you a quick update on the Excel add-in. So if you remember, I had told you Excel add-in is the ad hoc manipulation, correct? So here I am just going to give you what is happening in the Excel add-in. So this is also I have configured for the customer group. If I refresh, you will be able to see the customers, even what I have created now, even that also is appearing. So if you click on the refresh, it will bring the data from the particular entity. And if you want to update any data here, for instance, 2021, and if you try to publish, it will immediately start publishing. And if you go and see, refresh the data, you see here it will publish. It is this. And it will also respect the underlying validation. For instance, if I try to delete the record, for instance, let me try deleting a record and publish it. It might throw you an error because if the record is already, it has encountered an error. If you see, because the deletion is not possible because it is already there, this customer group is already mapped to another customer master. So if a customer master exists, automatically the delete action will appear, which means that it will not allow you to delete. So which means here the underlying the validations are also respected here. So that is what the Excel add-in does. So now I have covered a few of the hands-on scenarios. Let me go back to my slide again. Okay. How do you connect this environment and data flow? For instance, in F&O, you have different environment tiers. One is a cloud hosted environments where it is for the development purpose. On top of that, these environments, these tiers are managed by the Microsoft. For instance, the tier 2 is a standard acceptance instance where you will be able to do some 3000 transaction lines per hour if you see. And the tier 3 is for 7000. It is approximately not the exact count. It will support approximately 7000 lines per hour. And the tier 4 is 20,000 lines, and the tier 5 is about 20,000 lines. So keeping this in mind, you should also tie this with your integration flow. For instance, you are sending some 30,000 records to a tier 2 environment. You might not get the result. The reason being 30,000 records are not supported in the tier 2 environment. It might take some time. It will be in the queued status and it will be in the in process status for a long time. The job will be done, but immediately the result will not be seen immediately. So when you are sending the data, especially for the UAT or before go live testing, if you are doing a performance testing, then you should decide this environment which is the best environment for you to test when you are doing this integration, because this will give you an idea of how to send the data, how the environment is digesting the data when it receives the load from the external system. So here the environment planning and the data flow both matters here. Now, almost we have reached the end of the session. Now we have gone through what are all the approaches and the limitations in each approach. So now you will understand what are all the factors required for integration. Of course, the data volume, correct? So with the data volume, be it a non-peak or non-peak hours, be it a non-peak or non-peak time, the data value matters the most because you cannot design an integration for one for peak hours and not for non-peak hours, correct? So you should have an integration solution where it accommodates the data volume for both peak and non-peak time. So data volume is critical factor, and the frequency, how frequently we are sending the data to the system or exporting the data from the system. So for instance, if you are sending 10,000 records like every 30 minutes, or the customers are created by end of the business hours, or every 4 hours I am importing my sales order transactions. So this depends on the frequency. So frequency also is to be considered when you are designing an integration solution. And of course, it is whether it is a sync or async. For instance, if your limit is very low, I am importing only 10 records per hour or 100 records per hour, then you can check whether you can go for the OData approach or whether a custom service can help you. That factor you can decide. If you are importing a bulk, for instance, more than 10,000 records, or if you are importing more than 5,000 records, 5,000 records also you can go for OData. But the suggested one is in case if during the peak hours, if the limit increases, then it is ideal way to go is via the DIXF. So in this case, data volume, frequency, and the sync or async approach are major key factors to decide on the integration solution here. So here the recommendations are we need to align with the choice. So we need to be context aware. We need to decide on the volume, frequency, and the environment tier. Especially this environment tier matters when you are going for any performance testing before maybe or before go live. When you are testing in the other lower environments, this environment tier matters. So that is where you get you give you a picture whether all the integrations and the load are coming properly to your system. And you can use the synchronous for the real-time business scenarios where if there is a immediate sync needed between the two systems when a customer is created, it should be immediately reflected. In such cases, go for a synchronous real-time business scenarios. So in case of asynchronous, then it will be best for the bulk and the migration. So you can go for the event-driven scenarios for a decoupled integration. So where the publisher and the consumer need not be online when this process happens. So these are all the general recommendations. It is not I am saying it is not applicable for all the projects, but it is just a generic recommendations to keep in mind before we design an integration solution here. We have reached the end of the session. If you have any questions, you can ask me.